Throughout these last couple of years, there's been an increasingly growing sentiment amongst real gamers that they're rejecting DEI and woke elements being inserted into all their favorite games and franchises. And no company has kind of encapsulated this sentiment quite like Ubisoft has, a major video game studio that's been developing games for decades now. But despite all that, and despite having a lot of major IPs under their belt, all the stuff they've been putting out in the last year or so has just been tanking for them. And a lot of people have pointed to the fact that it's because specifically that they're prioritizing DEI over quality storytelling and quality gameplay. It's even gotten to the point where Ubisoft themselves has acknowledged that this has been harming them as a company. But despite all that, they still insist on doubling and tripling down on that. It's even gone so far as to say that one of the bosses for the upcoming Assassin's Creed Shadows game says that they're going to continue pushing DEI and even going so far as to attack critics who are not really happy with what they're doing as a company and what they're doing for their future games. Ubisoft Assassin's Creed boss Marc-Alexis Côté admitted that the company's injection of DEI into Assassin's Creed Shadows is harming the game's potential, but declared that he plans to double down on it, even attack its critics. That is not ever a good thing to do, to try to attack your audience. You should always listen to your audience, because I would think that would be a no-brainer. If you want to make money as a company, that you should listen to what people are saying that your company should be doing and then basically just do that. But they're not doing that. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that some companies that are trying to push DEI are doing it because from a business standpoint, they think that's profitable for them and they think that's better for them as a company to try to pander to those groups. Other companies like Ubisoft, for instance, are actually staffed by true believers in the cause. So even if it is actually detrimental to them as a company, they don't care as long as they can push their agenda. As reported by Eurogamer, Côté made an appearance at a BAFTA event where he shared that discussion of Ubisoft's DEI policies can influence how our gamers are perceived, but rather than shy away from those conversations, we should see them as an opportunity. From there, he attempted to gaslight people in attendance by stating, Assassin's Creed has always been about exploring the full spectrum of human history, and by its very nature, the history is diverse. Staying true to history means embracing the richness of human perspectives without compromise. And this is the excuse that he's trying to use for why they included Yasuke in the game, because anyone who criticizes it, he'd be like, oh, well, no, Yasuke was a real historical figure, so that's why we're including him in the game, so you can't have an issue with it because of that. Never mind the fact that this is also a deviation from what Ubisoft has done with Assassin's Creed games in the past, where you've never actually played as the historical figures. They're usually just side characters who are an ally to the main character, and if that's the approach they wanted to have with Yasuke and have him as a side character, I would have no problem with that. But it's pretty obvious what they're doing with this, because they wanted to have more diversity in the game. So that means they had to comb through Japanese history in order to try to find a non-Asian person that they can focus the game around. They could have easily just focused the game around William Adams, but that's not going to give them enough virtue signal points because he was a white guy and who was actually a samurai. Instead, they tried to basically change the history of Yasuke and say that he was a samurai, even though the evidence for that is highly debatable and most likely he wasn't actually a samurai. But still, that's the approach they're going to with this game, because they couldn't have a game just a bunch of Asian people. They needed to have something else in there. So that's basically what Yasuke is for this game. And also he's trying to say that people are critical over this game because of the inclusion of what is her name? Naoe, who is a female character who is also a playable character in this. And they're trying to say people are upset because there's a female playable character in this. And I really haven't seen much about it. I'm sure there's some people online who complained about having a woman as a playable character in this game, but that's not really what people are criticizing this game about. They're criticizing the game because it's pretty obvious the inclusion of Yasuke was just Ubisoft trying to push some type of political agenda in the name of diversity. Côté then pulled out the tired talking point that leftists always use. It's always been woke, or in this case, it's always been diverse, he said. And this isn't new ground for the franchise. From Altair to Avalanche de Grand Prix to Radhakedun, we've constantly introduced new protagonists from diverse racial, ethnic, and gender identities. History is inherently diverse, and so is Assassin's Creed and the stories we tell. And this is a problem that a lot of people have because they misrepresent diversity and being woke, because the difference is actually having a diverse cast because it makes sense to the setting that they're trying to tell the story in, versus having a diverse cast because they wanted to show more diversity for diversity's sake. Because a lot of those other Assassin's Creed games in the past, people didn't have an issue with the character choices because it was actually making sense to the settings. Like look at Assassin's Creed 3, having Connor as the lead playable character who is also part Native American made sense, even though some people can complain about like, oh, you have a game set in the American Revolution and you have a Native American character instead of an English person. Well, yes, I can see some people complaining about that, but no one did because the setting actually made sense for the character choice. We're not really seeing that with Assassin's Creed Shadow, even though you can actually look through history and find some reason to justify Yasuke's inclusion. But they're not doing that because it made sense for the story. They're doing it because they wanted to have a token black guy in the game. So they're trying to use some historic footnote to justify his existence within this game. If they would have just tried to tell a story that's a good story and not necessarily trying to just ham-fistedly put in some token characters, then people wouldn't be complaining about the choice of characters, even if one of them was a woman. But it's pretty obvious what they're doing, and they're definitely trying to almost misconstrue the arguments against the inclusion of Yasuke in the game. Côté declared, by choosing Naoe and Yasuke as protagonists, we are expanding the narrative landscape, offering new points of view that challenge established norms found in many works of fiction, while staying true to the history that shaped them. And to me, that's probably the worst thing about Ubisoft and Côté, because they treat people as if they're just part of the group that they belong to, or at least part of the group that they perceive them to belong to, never treating them as individual people, because you could have had an Asian man and had a different perspective than other Asian people within the game. But they didn't think that was enough. They think the only way you can have a different and unique perspective is if you actually had a black person as the lead character, as opposed to anyone else, because to them, Asian people all think one way, black people all think a different way, white people think another way too. And that's pretty disgusting because it's almost a dehumanizing way of looking at the world when you don't think of people as individuals, but you just think of people based off of the color of their skin or the country of origin they come through or their gender or whatever other characteristic that ultimately doesn't matter to how they are as an individual person. But it's pretty obvious that they're doing this because they are true believers in their whole agenda. They even say so much here. Côté then doubled down on the idea that Assassin's Creed is not a game, but something else altogether. Assassin's Creed is more than just a game. It can be a platform for meaningful exploration and reflection wrapped in the excitement of unforgivable gameplay. And it is that through a fusion of creativity, diversity, immersion, and fun that continues to define the franchise and connect it with players around the globe. And that's why Ubisoft will continue to ride this to the ground, because they are true believers in this agenda. And even if it means that they're going to lose their company, they're going to continue pushing this agenda because the people in charge at Ubisoft want to continue pushing this agenda. Some people have brought up the idea that like they go private and don't have to worry about the shareholders, then it'll actually improve things. But I'm not really so sure about it, because as long as the current leadership is in positions of power over at Ubisoft, they're going to continue to do this. The only difference that would make is that they might have less of a budget to work from and they can actually go under as a company, and they don't have people actually breathing down their necks. I'm talking to shareholders trying to tell them to push good games or make good games and go back to doing how they used to make things in the past. Only thing taking it private would mean is that they are free from any obligations to actually try to pretend that they're trying to produce money for the company. Instead, they'll continue to double and triple down on this agenda that they've been going down until the company is just gone. So if you actually want Ubisoft to continue to make good games, then you need to get rid of, or at least hope that Ubisoft gets rid of all the people in leadership positions at the company. And by going private with the way things would be, that's not really going to be the case. But let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And don't forget to click that like button and share this video out there because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.